So I've been looking on Google Earth again. Now this is a very old habit of mine, as many of you will know. I've been using Google Earth for archaeological research purposes since it was first brought out in the early 2000s. Thankfully these days, not only is all the imagery high resolution, but there is the historical imagery slider, which enables you to actually look at a particular part of the landscape over time. And because the imagery is updated semi-regularly, you can look at a particular feature or archaeological complex and maybe go back in time and see previous snapshots of it over the years. This can be very useful. At the moment, the main area of interest for me over the past while has been the Fourknocks area. There's a very good reason for this. I'm going to be writing about the Fourknocks complex in the near future. So quite a lot of things coming together in terms of research, which I want to disseminate some important information that's coming to light. In the meantime, I want to show you something that I've found in Google Earth, which may or may not be a previously unrecorded monument. Now, I have found a lot of monuments, previously unrecorded archaeological features, using Google Earth over the past 9 or 10 months. Well over 100 at this stage. Many of those have been recorded on the Sites and Monuments record in the National Monuments database online on the Historic Environment Viewer. Hopefully I can bring that up for you. Just going to resize this window so that it fits in. Okay, maybe not. Never mind. Okay, we'll just leave that aside for the time being. So, Fourknocks, of course, this is very interesting the way the fields have been done here. Let's just go back a little bit so that this isn't maybe quite so distracting. Fourknocks, the mound, Fourknocks 1, that was excavated in 1951 by P.J. Hartnett, is actually part of a complex of 3 mounds. He also excavated Site 2, which was found to have a cremation trench. Site 1 was the one that had a lot of burials in it. It has a passage that points very far towards the north, about 15 degrees east of north, which may be an astronomical alignment. That's discussed in my books. It's discussed in Island of the Setting Sun, in the Cygnus Enigma, and it's also discussed in Mythical Ireland, New Light on the Ancient Past. So Fourknocks is part of a complex. There are 3 megalithic mounds, passage tombs that we know of right here. There are several mounds in the area that are unclassified. We'll maybe talk about 1 or 2 of those. There are also henges, or embanked enclosures. These were documented by Geraldine Stout in her 1991 paper for the Royal Irish Academy, and as part of the sort of the Boyne area or the Boyne region, embanked enclosures. Now I'm just going to, so you can see this monument. This is the Fourknocks Micknanstown henge as documented by Geraldine Stout. You can see that this one actually, some of the images is not so easily visible. This actually is crossed by a more modern or a more recent field boundary. It's not really visible in some of the images, which is why it's very beneficial to have the historic slider, so that you can have a look at how it appeared in the past and maybe see an image of it when it was photographed in low light not low light, when the sun was low in the sky, so the shadows are long. In this case, this is almost certainly a winter shot, because you can see that the shadows are coming roughly from the south, a little bit east of south, and they're quite long. So this is a winter time or maybe a springtime shot. So that's 1 of 3. Further down then, at Micknanstown itself, you have a larger henge and a mound, an unclassified mound which may be a passage tomb and which is assumed to be a passage tomb, perhaps part of the complex. You'll see this henge is also crossed by a road. Actually, you see a vehicle there in that first image. You can see traces of parts of the monument that have been levelled by the agricultural activity over the past century or so. And so that's Micknan's town. And then to the west, a short distance away, are the remnants of the Heathtown embanked enclosure, the Heathtown henge. Now, when this was first examined by, I think it was Hartnett, and if it isn't, forgive me, that's my mistake, he thought this was part of an enclosure or a hill fort, and that this item here was a separate mound. In fact, in Stout, she had looked at photographs taken by the late Leo Swan, who's an aerial archaeologist, and he's mentioned in my Drone Henge book, one of the pioneers in discovering archaeology from the air. He found, and there are pictures on the Leo Swan archive online that show that there is a sinuous, is that the right word, a connecting a bank between these features that may not be easily visible now, Stout assumes this to be all part of one giant henge, which was probably around 200 metres in diameter, making it an enormous monument and probably one of the largest in Ireland at the time. So if these follow the pattern, and remember there's a paucity or a dearth of excavation of Irish henges, so there's very little information about them. But this trio of henges located in proximity to the small megalithic complex of Fourknocks suggests that this was a significant landscape in the late Neolithic, if these follow the chronology assumed for many of these henge-type monuments. That assumes that they were built in the phase, in the centuries after the passage tomb building phase. Now, because Hartnett's excavations took place in 1951, that was pre-carbon dating. I'm not sure that there were ever any carbon dates secured for Fourknocks, and so there isn't a specific date put on it, but there's something very interesting about the date of Fourknocks that I will talk about in this. I think I will probably write a blog post, a lengthy blog post or a web page about this whole area in the near future, trying to summarise some of the things that I've been, if you excuse the archaeological pun, digging up. Anyway, getting round to the story. This is a very long-winded, roundabout way, 8 minutes in, and I still haven't spoken to you about this alleged discovery. So immediately to the east of the Heathtown henge is this field. Just looks like an ordinary tillage field with a crop in it, you know. Now, in this field, in the National Monuments viewer, I'm trying to position this. Yeah, there we go. Sorry. There we have it. There are two recorded ring ditches. ME 033-058 and ME 033-059. Which appeared on a crop mark in an aerial photo. And that's how a lot of archaeology in Ireland is discovered. Now, I believe those two ring ditches can be seen very faintly in the imagery here. And I think this is the other one here. I think they roughly correspond with the positions of those two red dots in the National Monuments viewer. However, I couldn't help seeing this, and I just wonder whether I'm seeing things or not. And this is where it just becomes dubious, and you just have to put a question mark over it. I can see, or I think I can see, an oval enclosure which encompasses this ring ditch within its interior. Now, of course, I could be mistaken about this. This could be one of those things where you think you're seeing a shape and it's not actually there. The difficulty with this is, and the reason I haven't yet reported it to National Monuments, now I will report it when I finish making this video. Actually, I'll send an email with the image. I suspect it won't be added to the database on the basis that it's too tenuous. The difficulty is that if you scroll through all the other imagery, there's no sign of it. If it was visible on more than one, then you could say that there's a possibility, even a probability, that it's archaeology. The problem is that I've scrolled through all the other images and I can't see it. It's only visible in the crop mark, or in the crop that was in the field on the 21st of April this year, 2019. So I'm not sure whether that would be deemed, a feature or not. So one has to wait and see. Who knows, that maybe in the future when Google does further imagery updates, it may be that this thing will show more definitively. It may be that it might not. It may be the sort of thing that maybe one of us, myself or Ken Williams or somebody flying a drone, may be able to take a look at if there's a spring crop. If there's a crop in that field in the springtime, it may reveal itself. Satellite imagery isn't actually always the best way to see archaeology. Sometimes I think the drone imagery is far more detailed. The problem with the satellite is it's whatever it is, it may be 100 or 200 kilometers above the Earth, looking down through the atmosphere, taking pictures at a distance. There's a certain resolution, but it gets fuzzy when you zoom in enough. Probably the best example of this, actually, just while we're on the subject, is to have a look at Drone Henge. Drone Henge is only visible in one single Google Earth image, which is the image from the same time. There it is. I don't know if you can see it there. It's very difficult to make out. Here's the box, the porch-like feature. You can see the arc of double ditch features here to the south, and you can barely make out some of the double ditch features here on the northern arc. That is the only Google Earth image in which Drone Henge is visible, which is extraordinary. It's not visible in any of the other images taken over the past number of years, starting actually back in 2005. But even at that, you can zoom in, but you just don't see the same detail as you see from the drone images. So anyway, it may be that Fourknocks, Heathtown, that's an area that needs to be, sorry, I'm lost now. Fourknocks, Heathtown, that's an area that needs to be examined at a closer level by a drone. I don't know, anyway, you tell me what you see. Is it possible that that's an oval enclosure, or, I mean, literally, you can see there and there that are possible ditch features. Here, well, that's a big clump of dark area that could be anything, and here again, we could be just joining the dots. Who knows? What I was also interested in this field is that there are what appear to be old field boundaries that don't correspond with anything that's on the map. So if you look at the oldest, the historic 6-inch, I think is the oldest of the imagery, if I'm not mistaken. The maps. You'll see that the field, the way the field is divided is it's divided into 6 segments. But there's no line at any point running across it diagonally. In the way that you see this diagonal line running across the field. I wonder now, of course, it's always possible that there's some sort of a water supply pipeline or a gas supply pipeline running through that field. So if that turns out to be the case, I'll be highly embarrassed. I'm not suggesting this is archaeology, by the way, because it doesn't look like archaeology. Straight lines in fields are usually just old field boundaries. But it just makes me wonder if this area doesn't have more secrets to give up. I think personally it's highly likely that it does. Now, just to give you one example of that, if you go east from the Fourknocks tombs, if we call them that, the Fourknocks passage mounds. Further up on the ridge of the hill is this mound at Herbertstown, which has a folly, a tower built on the top of it, which may or may not be. It's probably prehistoric, but it may or may not be. Another passage tomb. It's classified as a mound, a flat-topped mound with a tower on the summit, so who knows. But a little bit further to the east of these, in the drought imagery from 2018, I discovered what appear to be 2 ring ditches. Now there may be another one here, and some sort of an interesting feature running between them, which is almost certainly an old field boundary. In fact, I think if I show you these, that they have been recorded. First of all, ring ditch, Herbertstown, Anthony Murphy. There you see my name on these features as the discoverer. If you have a look at the old, to zoom out to see the detail, you'll see that there is in fact an old field boundary that kind of runs between them. So I think that may account for that feature. And I wonder whether that's another very small ring ditch. I didn't report it and it hasn't been recorded, but I suppose if it had been seen, just wonder is there an image attached? There is. So I assume that the National Monument Service saw this as well. So I'm assuming that they didn't think it was a ring ditch. Anyway, I'm digressing. I digress considerably. So here we have, within a short distance, evidence for a cluster of mounds which are assumed to be all Neolithic in date. Almost certainly, the Fourknocks 1 and 2 are Neolithic in date. This mound at Herbertstown with the folly on it may be a Neolithic passage tomb. Could be later, of course. The ring ditches could be the remains of Bronze Age barrow mounds or ring-barrows. And then we have at least 3 henges. Of course, I say at least because we see in the Boyne Valley how some of the henges, such as Dronehenge, Site LP2, and some of the riverside henges may have been structures that were never embanked. So they were built of timber and dug out trench sections that may be now all but invisible. So there's a complex there, including 3 henges. And then this other possible enclosure, which may be part of the complex, and again, more ring ditches here. Who knows? So we'll see. This is definitely a case where time will tell. And time will tell. For the moment, there's very much a question mark over this. But possible enclosure is the best thing that I can describe it as right now. And of course, when you say enclosure, really what you're saying is that's a very general, arbitrary term that describes an enclosed area, usually by a circular or quasi-circular enclosure or ditch or bank or something like that. But calling it enclosure means that you don't know whether it's, a henge from the Neolithic or a medieval ring fort or, some sort of a large Bronze Age barrow or some sort of an Iron Age fortification. Who knows? So it's very much a case of time will tell on this one. Anyway, in the near future, hopefully, if I get the time, I'm going to be writing something about the Fourknocks complex, and I believe you will find it very interesting and highly exciting, as I have done. But anyway, thanks for listening, and if you want to, as usual, send any comments, please feel free to comment on the video below, or send me an email, mythicalireland@gmail.com.